That's the focus that you should be having basically when it comes to, good leads versus bad leads. So remember,
understand that this is a very crucial part of the business. And you get overwhelmed, and guess what? Nothing happens when you're overwhelmed, and now you lost out on a potential.
that's the only reason that you have like a good lead.
If you want to sell 50 houses, you got to figure out how to get 100 great leads throughout the year.
Okay, Phone Warrior Nation, welcome back to our series that we have put together for you guys with myself, Dean Clark, and Richard Adamski here. We are next in our block of how to build the most incredible business in 2025 and beyond. We have the topic today, which is very exciting, at least for me. I'm not sure about you, Rich, but lead follow-up is our topic today. Rich, how do you feel about this one?
Hey, lead follow-up. It took me years to understand when people said, hey, listen, all the money's in the follow-up. I understand what that means now. And lead follow-up is probably, outside of prospecting to get that lead, I think is the most crucial part. That's my personal opinion of the whole entire transaction, is just continue to follow up with them.
Yeah. And so the first point that I want you guys to really drive home, and this is like, what is the definition of a lead, right? Like, that's something that Rich and I have honed in the context on, like, what is the definition of an actual lead? And our definition is that it is a person who agrees to an appointment or will sign a contract in a specified period of time. I like to know that if they have the ability between 7 to 10 days from the time you have that initial conversation, that's really a lead, right? It's different than a nurture, let's say. So like, the key when you're focusing on this, they want to do something relatively like now, let's just say, right? So, one of the things that, like, at least I do to really make sure that I know I have a good sense of like who's real and who's not is, of course, and we're going to talk about this next week, which is pre-qualifying. So that allows me to know, are you really going to be doing something, whether it's with me or somebody else, in the next, let's say, week or two? And if you're not within that purview in terms of time frame, unless you're a past client or a database member of mine, then there's no real long-term lead follow-up there. It's kind of like shelf it, and maybe I'll get back to you unless there's like a serious condition, as opposed to an objection of not wanting to do business with me now. So.
Absolutely. And listen, point number 2, which is my personal favorite, so I'm happy that I'm actually able to say this one, is what I preach all the time. It's called the 3-2-1 method. So what that means is, when a contact comes in, let's say right now it's 2:00, a lead comes in at 2:00, you have to, if you can, within the first 5 to 15 minutes, get in contact with that lead. But it doesn't matter. Lead comes in at 2:00. You want to call them the first time, hopefully within the next 15 minutes. Then you want to call them in the same day, maybe an hour later, a second time. And then if it's 2:00, you call at 3:00 and they didn't answer, maybe call again around 6. Call them 3 times in a day. Preferably if you can hit them 3 times at the first time, and then still do the additional 2. But you call them 3 times in a day. I will refrain from sending them a text message day 1 or an email day 1, because then they'll know who you are. And then if they're going to put that sales wall up, that wall is going to go up and they'll never pick up. And then the next day, that same contact, you call them 2 times. So maybe you call them 8 a.m. and you call them 2 p.m. or you call them at 12 p.m. and you call them at 6 p.m. Call them 2 times. And then at that moment in time, I would suggest intertwining a text message and email 2 times right over there. And then the last day, day 3, would be one time within that day at some point in time. And if you follow this method, you're going to have multiple leads throughout the day and multiple people to keep calling. And then you're going to be able to have a greater chance to be able to get in contact with that lead. So it's called the 3-2-1 rule.
I love that. I love that rule, man. And so, and number 3 is, we cannot let the good leads be buried by the bad leads, right? So, what is a bad lead and what's a good lead? Again, going back to the definition of, like, how do you sort this out? And this is what I'll say kind of off the cuff right now, is that amateurs convince and professionals sort. So I think that was when I heard that, I was like, wow, that actually it makes a lot of sense now, being in the business as long as we are. Like, we're just professional sorters. We're seeing where should we put our focus on who's going to be a good lead versus a bad one, because what happens is it's going to kill your urgency to conduct the lead follow-up that you have for the day. If you know that you're really not pre-qualifying, you're really not digging deep on the initial call to know if that person is a true lead or not, even if you get referred by somebody, then you're going to be following up on just fluff. And that's not going to do anything for you. But if you know someone is like, yeah, you've answered all the pre-qual questions, I know this is for real, it's just a timing thing that we have to get together to meet in person. I mean, that is someone I'm going to follow up with. And that's the focus that you should be having basically when it comes to, good leads versus bad leads. So remember, amateurs convince, professionals are sorting.
Absolutely. And point number 4 is you have to be very, very highly motivated to perform lead follow-up, right? If your energy level's down, then guess what? If you do get in contact with that client, you're probably going to bring their energy down. So you have to be uplifting everybody you speak to, especially in a lead follow-up or especially a potential client. Okay, so you want to have that high energy when you follow up. Second part of that is any leads that you hold, any leads that you possess are also in the hands of, guess what? Another real estate agent as well. So those are not going to be glorified leads to just you and you only, right? It's usually the first person that will make the contact will win that lead. So that's why I say speed is king here to get the lead. But the most importantly, you want to have high energy because you want to be different if you are the second person, different from the first agent or the second agent that had made that contact with that lead. And you want to possess a different type of energy.
Yeah, and I just want to just say one thing about that, Rich, because I think that we have to be really clear about this because, I want to really hone in on the highly motivated part to perform the lead follow-up for people and agents out there because, like, as an example, I'll give you a quick story. I was getting my haircut the other day, and I posted actually on my feed that I showed a text message between this prospect and myself. She happened to be sitting right next to my chair in the salon. I ended up hearing the words that every realtor that you should be lighting up with joy hear. And it got me highly motivated to like being like, should I follow up with that, what she just said, or am I going to look annoying or something, right? And so the reality is, and what the reason I posted it on my story for everyone to see is that she said at the end, like, I was very polite, I was not too aggressive, it's all good. And the whole point is that you can never be over the top with someone who's actually motivated to do something. So that was just like one thing I wanted to throw out there that I showed that like if you do it the nice way and what we say the progressive way, you're gonna go very far with this lead follow-up thing, and you're never gonna worry about like not being in front of somebody in that way. So number next is 70% of your business will most likely come from the lead follow-up that you're gonna be doing. We hear these stats that like it does take the majority of your day. I mean, if it were me and kind of where I'm really pushing my sales individual business to is if I can spend the majority of my time on lead follow-up, personally, that's what I would be like loving to do anyway. Because all the money is in lead follow-up. Yes, there were times back when, let's say, expireds were really big, between like 2008 and 2015, 14, where like you could live off of the one contact that you didn't really have to follow up on. You just booked an appointment that same day, you went on it, you got it. But those days, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, here, but we hear a lot of realtors in the nation that are telling us, I don't have any expires, I don't have any FISBOs. So guess what? Like all the business then you really have is in lead follow-up.
Absolutely. And that is a story all around. And that brings me to the next point is guess what? If you're not getting a lot of business from lead follow-up, it could take a while, I guess, right? That means you are not doing a good job in lead follow-up, or it doesn't even exist at all in your business. So the whole point of lead follow-up is for you to be able to be that 70 percentile, because we all know chances are on your first contact, very slim to get on that appointment. That second contact, listen, as much as people want to say you're not building rapport, you're going to have to start building rapport and you have to start future pacing for the next call that they're going to be anticipating from you. And you're going to be collecting all that data. So then when you are following up, you take that data collected and you're going to use it in your conversation. So if you're going to be following up, just make sure that you're doing it once again to a high level. And if you're not getting appointments off of lead follow up, I can almost bet you next to nothing that you are not just doing it simply. So just understand that this is a very crucial part of the business.
100%. And the most important part of this lead follow-up game is really the ability to going back to focus and knowing what's a good lead and what's not a bad lead. But I mean, look, you're going to have to work through a lot of leads to reach your goal. It's just part of the process. And I think that this is why this is a point in and of itself here, because I want to be very clear. Like if you're not being able to focus, like again, going back to that salon example, she said the words, "I want to sell my house." And my ears perked right up. I was like, "Ooh, should I say something? Should I not say something? What should happen here?" And I was like, "You know what? Screw it. I had to say something because then I'm not a good leader. You know what I mean? Like, if I can't do it, no one's gonna do it." So I end up going up to her, and I just say, "Look, I mean, I hope I'm not too forward here, but I did overhear what you said, but again, it was the focus. It was the focus of me hearing that and I mean, like, okay, this may or may not be something here." But then I immediately followed up with that person. So, via text to make sure she had my number, she understood what was going on here. So, again, like really making sure that if they're not motivated, there's no reason to follow up with these people. I mean, that's just it, man. Like there's no what are we doing? Like what are you doing really? If you know you've asked what we have in our playbooks here in like the phone warrior communities, the 5 core seller questions or the 5 core buyer questions, when you've done that basic minimum and the answers don't make any sense to you, common sense, well then you probably don't have a lead. Like this isn't like rocket science here. People that are looking to buy a home, this isn't buying an iPhone. This is a huge investment. You have to have some wherewithal, common sense, for you to save enough money to actually have the ability to buy a home anyway. So you're dealing in the common sense world. And if you lack any of that, then so do your clients potentially. And that's why you have a lot of fluff and just a lot of dead weight you have to get rid of. And I hope that really, sinks into everyone's mind here.
Listen, we are all great salespeople here. We're all great real estate agents. But at the end of the day, we're not good enough to persuade that particular person if they have zero motivation to want to do anything. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, no matter what you give, you're never going to be able to persuade that person if they don't have the motivation to want to take the next step. So, yeah, that's the Dean's point. Next point is each day you need to take a careful look at the leads that you currently have, right, and determine who is going to likely give you an appointment that day. Okay. You need to call them first. Now, I would like to say, look, we all don't have 30, 40, 50 leads in a day to call back. Hopefully it's like 2, 5, 10, like something manageable. But at the end of the day, you want to find that one lead that you think is an A, call them first, then go through all the leads again. And then you're going to want to follow up with that A again, just to make sure that you're staying in front of them, right? And when you call them first, hopefully it's either the beginning of the day, right? My day starts off with what we call hot lead follow-up. That's the first call I'm going to make because I already know that I had a conversation with them. So my energy is not going to get sucked out if I'm not calling, if I'm calling expired or FISBO, that could make me in a bad mood. But I'm already calling somebody that I already know some information. I have a little rapport with, right? So I call them first, but you don't have to call them first in the day. But whenever your section is 11 a.m., 2 p.m., 4 p.m., call that hot lead first because then sometimes, you know what? Life gets in the way and then you forget that day, you forget the second day, you forget the third day, and all of a sudden now you do have 50 and you get overwhelmed. And guess what? Nothing happens when you're overwhelmed. And now you lost out on a potential listing appointment or a potential buyer appointment or a rental sale. It doesn't matter what it is, call them first.
I think a lot of us, do struggle with the fact of not knowing exactly what to say. And that's why we pride ourselves in the phone warrior community as leaders here to make sure that all of you great salespeople in here, and also on our teams and organization within EXP, that you guys are equipped with the skills and the ammunition with your conversation skills to know what to say in every sales situation. And I will be beating on that horse until the day we're out of the business, which probably will be never. And because that is the most crucial thing that you can do. And so listen, this is the next point, and you guys got to realize something, man. Like, dude, your leads have no value. Okay, like what Rich said before about another agent has these leads. You know what I mean? Like they have no real value. The potential value that must first be converted into an appointment or a contract signed. That is like that's through good lead follow up. But that's the only reason that you have like a good lead, or have any value to those leads is that they become a lead to an actual converted appointment to really a contract signed. So don't sit here and think like, ooh, look at my stack of leads. Like this is really cool. Like, I'm going to be so good for the beginning of 2025, let's say, or beginning of whatever year you're actually watching this. You know what I mean? It's like, no, it doesn't matter how many leads you have. It's like, can I book an appointment now or in the next 7 days with this person? And if you can't, man, you have a nurture lead. I mean, if anything.
To that point, you know, there's always those three things from a lead, right? Like you said, if you can book an appointment today or within the immediate near future.
Mhm.
Number two is actually, can I get a referral or send a referral on this particular client that I'm talking to? And number three is, can I add them into my database as a COI, right? So you have three different factors when you're talking to a lead. So you have to expand your brain, because it's not just lead follow-up. It's how could I help this particular person, right? And just remember, like my next point is, at the end of the day, yes, we all prospectors, whether you like the word or not, we like to talk to people, fall in love with talking to people, however you want to say this, right? But lead follow-up is the equivalent to prospecting. Because let's face it, not every single person, if you talk to them yesterday, you're probably not going to call them today. It's probably a week. It's probably a month. It's probably 6 months. It's probably 12 months. In most cases, it is like, oh, call me back in a year. And then you call back in a year and they sold it a month later. It's because we weren't good enough to be able to get into that appointment, right? So it's just like prospecting, I should say. And it is a numbers game at the end of the day. It's like, all right, next appointment. Next. Oh, I got an appointment, right? Like you just got to figure out what that is. And if you keep track on the lead follow-up side, along with the prospecting, expired, FISBOs, circle prospecting, just listed, all that fun stuff on that side, you keep track of those numbers, then you'll be able to get granular and be like, okay, well, I need to speak to 10 follow-ups before I can get an appointment. Great. That's your follow-up side. I need to speak to X on the other side, and you'll continue understanding it's a numbers game.
Here's the next point. Your leads do not, going back to like having no value, but guess what? There's no security in having a bunch of leads. Like leads are nothing more than the people that need to be called and converted into appointments. That's it. So there is no security with all this stuff. Just because you have a stack of 10 people that say they're going to do something maybe one day in the future when they could get out of their house if they got the good price and their interest rates it's like, no, guys, forget about that. Because look, here's something else. You cannot take a non-motivated person and make them motivated. Okay. So like one question that Rich and I like to ask a lot, and it really does work a lot, to see truly why are you looking to sell or why you're looking to buy, which is, if you say it like that, it's kind of like really in your face, more direct. Even in Jersey, it's a little bit kind of off-putting. So the way I say it is, hey, what's the biggest benefit to you selling the property now versus holding on to it, either staying in the house or renting it? And that what's the biggest benefit phrase can go with buying. Hey, what's the biggest benefit for you even looking to buy something right now as opposed to stay renting? And so it's not like just because everyone wants to be homeowners, just like not every seller wants to, Rich, right? Get top dollar. Maybe they want to sell really fast. They don't care what they get. You've had many instances like that.
You have to listen. Exactly. Like, you could be at a listing appointment and they say, oh, I don't want anybody in my house. And they know that they're not going to want to have anybody in the house and you're forcing them to list the property, but then maybe you take it as a pocket listing and then you have somebody else, a buyer or an investor that's lined up, and you can sell it off market. You get paid and the seller's happy because you listened to what they wanted, right? Or if they're so adamant, I don't want to pay a commission. So then guess what? You hear they want to pay a commission, but they'll sell it 50 grand less than what the market value is because they are in their mind that they don't want to pay a commission. So you just have to listen and do your job at the highest level possible, because when you're listening and you're doing what the client wants to be done, then guess what? You're going to start seeing the world open up, and the world of real estate gets really, really big at that moment in time when you start seeing outside of the box, right?
Mhm.
Um, because look, your goal should be, when you're calling every lead, ideally at the exact moment that they're just deciding to do something. You ever hear that scenario where I called at the right time and I was able to get that? Well, it is all about timing, right? So that means you must be conducting good lead follow-up, right? Great lead follow-up with great detailed notes, because the bad ones you need to toss away. Delete them, throw them in the trash can, whatever you have to do. Just get them out of your life, because at the end of the day, you have to remember the good ones are going to get sabotaged by the bad ones. And then you listen, if you want to sell 50 houses, you got to figure out how to get 100 great leads throughout the year, and then just sell 50% of those. That's 50 transactions right there. So your job is to every day speak to people, create leads, create database calls, and guess what? Figure out which ones are going to sell. And if you can do that at a high level, you know what, two a month, that's going to get you to your 50 deals right there. It's kind of that easy.
Yeah, no, it really is. And the next thing here is like, prospecting without good lead follow-up, guys, is like filling a bathtub without a stopper in the drain. You know what I mean? Like, because 70% of the appointments come from lead follow-up. So with that stat in the back of your mind, like, you can prospect all day long for new business, but do you have the equivalent of good lead follow-up? You see, this is like a cycle, okay? When you're running a true sales business, now, everyone's got a different way of how they're building their business, how they're growing it. They could be a marketing agent, a farming agent, or an open house agent. We come from the place of prospecting. It's not that doesn't mean cold calls, by the way. Everyone's like, "Oh, you guys are just cold calling." I'm like, "No, we're not. That's just like a part of our business, okay?" And that is, mainly database, but the lead follow up. And frankly, my team right now, I have all my top agents on the team calling their database and lead follow up predominantly for 3 hours a day. That's it. I don't want them calling any of besides the new leads that may come on sign calls or something like that. I don't want them calling, on random stuff. So the point is that it's a cycle. It's this circle cycle that you have in the business, right? You prospect, you lead follow up, you go on appointments, you convert, you get a closing. You prospect, you lead follow up, you go on an appointment, you get the listing, you close it. But what if you're light on lead follow up? So all you're doing is all this hard work, and you're not getting anywhere on the other two angles, because we're not in that market. This is a lead follow up market that we're in, at least right now, and probably for the next 5 years. I don't think it's going to change that much, because the market's always going to be always going to go up and down. But for right now, the cycle is going to be real estate, where it's going to be low inventory just because of where the rates are and other things like that.
I totally agree with that. And to the last point that I have, I'm going to blend this because I read this somewhere. I couldn't remember if it was through our CEO of our company here at EXP, or if it was on the newsletter. I don't remember where it was, but I remember reading it through one of those channels, and it said you lose more business from under calling, right? And versus overcall on them, right? And what that means is motivated people at the end of the day are looking for motivated real estate agents. That's it. It's that. It's motivation, his progressive way of taking the business. But look, you take a highly motivated person that's looking to do something, and you take a highly motivated real estate agent, and you put them together, mix with their expertise, you're going to get them top dollar for their property. And guess what? That homeowner, that buyer, well, listen, that homeowner is going to love you. And if it's a buyer, you're going to get them into their dream home and they're going to love you just as equally. So just don't forget, you lose more business from not calling versus aggressively calling.
Yes, dude. And and it's interesting because when you say that, I thought about something that I just went through actually 2 weeks ago. So I called this expired lead and they told me absolutely not. I went through the whole pre-qual, everything. I went through all the questions, at my skill level. Like I really knew I went down the whole rabbit hole. And at the end of the conversation, there was no appointment to be had. But she did say, we might be open to this, let's say at the beginning of the year. Now, I said to myself, okay, well, that doesn't really fit the 7-day thing. However, her answers were interesting. And this is where you have to listen. Because what she was telling me is that the property was vacant. So there's no one paying her mortgage off, her taxes. That was weird. And then secondly, the only reason that they're holding it off, they're not even living there as a pet a terre. So the point of what I'm trying to say is, I was listening for these answers. And when you get really good and internalize these scripts and dialogues, I said, you know what? I originally put it in my calendar to follow up with this lead in the beginning of the year, like she's telling everyone else. I said, you know what? I'm going to call next week, a week later. And guess what happened, Rich? Got her on the phone. She says, well, we have thought about it. I think we're going to, do something a little bit sooner than we thought. Can you come over on Wednesday and do an assessment, do a walkthrough?
Mic
So,
drop.
I mean, the point is that it also goes back to listening. This is sales, right? So it's like, if you don't listen to those answers, and I'm like, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, why would you just have a vacant apartment, no rent? There's no tenants in here. You're not even staying there. You mean to tell me you just want to wait 3 months because of the election, all these different things? No, that doesn't make any sense to me because I wouldn't do that. Right? And I seem to, I mean, I'd like to believe, Rich, that we're pretty normal to a certain extent. So anyway, I just wanted to share that, guys, with you because like a lot of times you need to test and take the risk. And I was saying this to a newer agent to the team because they asked me about lead follow-up in this way. And you have to start taking risks on being creative on when you're following up with the leads. Sometimes they just give you a smoke screen, and no matter how good your skills might be, but then you have to take, okay, what's my behavior going to be for that said person in the future? And in this case, it was a week later because I'm like, let me just ask this one more time for an appointment, because before the end of the year's out, because there might be something there after all the calls subside this week from everyone else calling, and now I'm on the last one there in front of them. And sure enough, and guess what? This was a $1.9 million listing. So listen, guys, like this isn't something like we did 20 years ago. Rich and I are doing this today, and we are looking for partnerships in our organization here at EXP. And if you guys are looking to explore that option, feel free to hit us up, DM us, subscribe to our channel, of course, and let's make this happen. And let's keep on growing, baby.
Absolutely. We're always here for you. You can find us on all our social channels. Click on the calendar link, brings you right to our calendar, and we can have always a 15-minute conversation over anything, whether you want to talk about lead follow-up, you want to talk about how to prospect, what we're doing. We're an open book. We don't close the chapter on anybody. So we're here. We appreciate you. I'm Richard Dempsey, Dean Clark, Phone Warriors Nation. We appreciate you. Thank you.